This year has been a phenomenal year for electric mountain bike motors, but which one is the best hill climber? We're going to compare 3 of the top motors, so let's dive in. In this motor comparison, we are going to be comparing 3 of the top motors right now. So first we have the Specialized. This is the S-Works model, so it has the 3.1 motor with 111 newton meters of torque and 720 watts of power. The Amflow, which comes with a default of 750 watts in the USA and 105 newton meters of torque. However, we did adjust the peak power all the way up to 1,000 watts for all the tests. And then we have the Trek. So this does have the new Bosch Performance CX, the BDU38, that has 750 watts of power and 100 newton meters of torque. So they're all in that 100 newton meter range, and they are all really fun to ride. Now with the challenge, we're really trying to identify on this. We're not identifying the best bike, because there's a ton of things that go into riding. We're really just trying to isolate the motor's ability to climb, so the power, and then how the motors feel when they climb, which one's more natural and which one just kind of we prefer, again, only on the climbs. So to do that, we've got 3 different riders here. We're all going to ride 3 different trail segments, hills, on each bike. And all of us are a little bit different skill level, where Bryce is kind of our intermediate to expert rider. He just bombs the hell out of stuff, and he's awesome. I'm more of kind of your intermediate guy, but I got a concussion 4 months ago, so I have not ridden very much. I'm a little bit out of shape, so I'm definitely gonna need the motors. And then Mike here is kind of our resident gravel expert. Does a ton of gravel riding, coaches NICA on his analog bike, does not do a lot of electric mountain biking. So for those of you who are kind of maybe electric curious and looking into it, you'll see what it's like for someone going into the eMTB space for the first time. Now, the trails that we're gonna do. One of the trails is Brackens, and it is just, it's called Ass Kick Hill. It is really steep, it is loose, it is just a really hard climb. And so it's gonna really test both the torque and the wattage, and also a little bit of the ability of the bike to stick to the ground. The next one, we call it the Slab, and it's just a really good, it's still steep, but it's just a steady incline on a big red rock slab, slick rock. Gorgeous, super fun to climb on an e-bike, not on an analog bike. And then we're actually gonna go to a paved trail called Mount Everest, AKA cardiac arrest. And to be honest, that one is possibly one of the more important ones. I know most people don't do hill challenges on pavement with eMTBs, and it makes sense because you're not really buying them for that. But when you're really trying to isolate the motor and ignore kind of the geometry, the kinematics, the suspension, and all of that, and your trail riding abilities, paved really does a good job. And this hill is an absolute beast. It will kill you and literally put you into cardiac arrest if you're trying it not on something, not an e-bike. So we have some fun climbing ahead, and we're really excited to see which one comes out on top. So let's go climb some hills. Okay, this is our first challenge. It is called Ass Kick Hill out at Church Rocks. Now, the trail is on Strava. What it clocks at is just under a quarter mile, 90 feet of elevation, which kind of doesn't sound like a ton, but when you're out there, it's hard. So it's steep, it's loose, it's a little bit technical, and it's quite a challenge. So we're gonna see which one does best here. So let's hit it. Oh boy. Oh dang it, missed the turn again. Oh boy, that's fast. Oh yeah. All right, Turbo Levo on the course. Okay, on the Specialized in Turbo, we're gonna see how this one feels. So far, it's feeling nice and planted on that. A little bit extra weight might help through some of this. Braking into the corner. Still feeling very fast, obviously. Got some loose corners. That turn. There we go. Whew. We are flying. Oh, this is the rock that always gets me. Oh, I might have lost about a second there. That felt really good. Really solid going up that hill. Okay, here we go, Trek rail with the Bosch. Okay, Gen 5. Now we're on the Trek rail. Woo. And ooh, she goes. Right out of the gate feels pretty good. Nice and planted. Loose, chunky stuff. I'm in turbo, obviously. Good traction. Hit the motor a little bit, but they've definitely quieted up this motor a bit. I'll fly. Okay. Big corner, nice. Man, I'm impressed with this new Bosch. Here, let's see how it handles this turn. Okay. The super loose stuff. Whew. Oh, that's fun. Let's see what we got. Okay, so that was Ass Kick Hill, and I gotta say, it didn't quite feel like an ass kicking like it normally does. So, Bryce, you lead us off. I think you deserve to lead us off. Tell us how it went.
Well, I was marginally better on the Levo than I was on the Trek. It did feel a little bit easier. Both the Trek and the Specialized felt a little more planted in the trail. However, the Amflow blew the times away of both of those, and it was easier on ledgy step ups and sections of trail. It was just easier to move the bike around when you're going that fast.
Mm-hmm. And what did you think in terms of the power difference between them? Like how much of a difference was it?
You know, when you go on an e-bike, you go from eco, trail, boost, or whatever you want to call it. It just felt like the boost in the Amflow was that next level above both of these bikes.
Yeah, the 1,000 watts.
It's just, yeah, it shows.
Okay, Mike.
Well, similar to Bryce, the Specialized and the Trek, I had very similar results. They felt, well, like he said, marginally different, but they both felt really good. I got my best time with the Amflow, and I had to go a couple runs because on the Amflow, I started using trail, and then I tried to kick it to turbo when I needed it, and what happened is I found it was so much power on turbo that I was kind of popping the front end, and I was losing control, even with my weight pushed forward. So I brought it back down to auto mode, and that was able to let me kind of just find my way with dynamic power delivery that kind of just flowed with me, which is what ended up being the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, which is really cool for someone that hasn't done a lot of electric mountain biking.
Right, less thinking about the motor, more focus on just picking my line.
And you did the same thing with the Trek and the Specialized, right?
Yes, yep.
On the auto modes.
Yep.
And did they all, in terms of the auto modes, did you have one that was a preference, or did they, I mean, they all kind of do really good
I feel like
job.
eMTB mode on the Bosch motors feels just as good. The only thing that makes one stand out from any of them is on the Amflow, the assistance has a bit more of a natural feel to it. It's just more smooth and more natural feeling, so you don't notice that power surge as much. Even with auto power being dynamically applied, it's slightly more refined to where it's not getting into your head when you're pedaling. You're not thinking, oh, a surge of power. You're able to just focus on going up the hill.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I had similar experiences to both of them. I have a bone to pick with Bryce because I actually got what would have been the Calm on the Amflow. I've been wanting that for years, and Bryce just destroyed me. So, you know, as far as my times, the Specialized and Trek were actually neck and neck. I think the S-Works was maybe 1 second faster. They both did, to echo what Bryce said, feel very planted to me. Like, I did actually appreciate the weight through, especially that last section of chunk. Like it just sticks to the ground. I also appreciated the mullet setup. Where a couple of those switchbacks, I just felt really good on those bikes. And to be honest, like had I not jumped on this, I would have just been unbelievably in heaven. Like these are fantastic bikes. Get on here, and there's just that difference for me between the 1,000 watts, like in the 750 and the 720. That's just, it's an unfair advantage almost, and you definitely feel it. Yeah, you do. But to echo what Mike said, the distribution of that power, how smooth and naturally engaging, is just fantastic. They've done an awesome job. And to be honest, all three bikes are just fantastic.
There's no losers here for sure.
I think we should just take off and keep them.
Yeah,
done.
So, yes, exactly.
All right, guys, so we're gonna run this next segment on this huge piece of slick rock up here. It's not actually segmented in Strava yet, or at least we don't think it is. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna run it. We're gonna mark where we ride it. We're all gonna record it, and then we'll be able to create an actual segment so we can give you guys the data on the screen. But it's a good, more of a apples to apples comparison of motor only, because it's not as slick and technical as far as like the loose chunk everywhere. And that'll allow us just to focus on pedaling, getting up there, and seeing how each motor feels.
Okay, about to go racing on the Amflow. See how it does up the slab. This 1,000 watts feels heavy as hell. Wow. We're just flying up this thing. Oh, Nelly, that was fast.
Okay, Levo. First ride. See how fast we can get up. It does keep traction really well.
Okay, so we're on the Levo, doing the slab climb in turbo.
It does feel a little slower.
And again,
than the
this thing just
Amflow.
feels planted. I mean, it's rocky, obviously. It's not very loose, but it just sticks to the ground. Oh, that's fun. Okay, we are riding up this slab with the Trek Roll Plus 8, and
All right.
I've ridden this a ton with the Nike team.
Coming in. All right, let's go.
It's a lot more fun on an e-bike. That I will tell you for sure. So I'm in turbo, cranking it pretty hard. I'm out of shape, and I'm still flying.
Oddly enough,
Good engagement.
probably feels the
it's
least
fun.
powerful of the three.
Oh boy,
But I
that
felt
made
that
it
on one
fast.
of the other segments.
And we'll see
So,
how that did. Okay, so we just got done climbing the slab, which was a bit easier than the first one, right? So thoughts. Okay, Mike, why don't you start us off? Tell us what you thought between the three bikes.
Yeah, so I mean, first things first, like you said, it was an easier run, so I was able to actually focus more on just what motors felt like, because on the other one, while it was super steep and the motors helped, I was more focused on my line. I did notice the more planted feel that the Trek had and the Specialized had, because the Amflow is just noticeably lighter and more playful. And it just feels more powerful, or you get more bang for your buck per crank. At least to me, that's how it felt. I felt like the Amflow just was easier to maneuver and had better power, but I did prefer some of the weightiness coming on the descents from the other two.
That makes sense. Bryce?
yeah, I have to say, like, rarely am I going to come up a trail in turbo mode as fast as I can, right? Having said that, it really was a good representation of what these bikes feel like on the trail with the different motors. And, you know, I can agree, like the Amflow just felt lively and light and just easier to maneuver up a trail versus the Trek and the Specialized. It felt more planted and a little bit less powerful. For me, the Trek felt marginally less powerful than the Specialized. And then of course the Amflow took the cake, but we don't have Strava segments posted yet, so we'll see what those times actually are.
Yeah, so when we get back, we'll create the segment and we'll post everything. From a feel standpoint, at least, I think we all kind of agreed that the Amflow felt the fastest. And I would agree actually with what both of them said. Like the one thing that I will add on all of these bikes, it just made the climbing this thing fun. Like I've climbed this so many times with the Nike team, and it's just a slog when you're on an XC bike, even like climbing up this thing. And I felt like I was going downhill almost in some cases.
Yeah, you could go fast.
Yeah, but I will say, again, to echo kind of what Mike, what you said a little bit there, as I mentioned, I'm a little bit out of shape, and I had to push a little bit more on these two bikes, and this one I just flew. So super fun all the way around.
Yeah, I was noticeably more out of breath at the top with this one for some reason.
Yeah, but again, I also want to just make sure you remember, like, we're basically comparing three all-stars here.
Right.
Like, we're talking marginal.
Yeah, we sound super snobby.
And we
They're all
get to be
great.
snobby, which is awesome. We are at Mount Everest. Now, this hill has very well earned the nickname cardiac arrest. I've tried to go up this hill before on other e-bikes. It is an absolute beast. We usually don't take bikes up this because of how steep it is. But this is where we're gonna test these three motors and see how they do. It is incredibly long, incredibly steep. I'm a little nervous to do this. I think I'm gonna die maybe, but let's get to it and see how it goes. Maxed out, put everything in turbo, and this thing is flying. I almost had to brake going into that first turn. So we will see how it does. I still think this next section is going to be hard, but I'm definitely bumping up to that 20-mile limit. Oh, hit the pedal there, and let's go. Oh, it's cruising, and it's hard. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's hard. But not as hard as the others. I think this time's gonna be really good. Okay, we're gonna test all these 111 Newton meters of torque here. After this right-hand turn, it gets hella steep. So we're gonna see how this bike does. I might have to be quiet for a second, because even with all this power, it's gonna wear me out. So here we come. Mentally preparing myself here. Already in that 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. And let's see how we do. Oh, this is steep. I know the GoPro won't show it. Oh. 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 Oh, that's a steep section. I will finish strong here. Let's see what this gets. This thing gets really steep up here, and so we're gonna see what it does. Drop some gears, and let's hit it. Oh boy, I need a turbo button here. Oh. Oh, this thing is steep. Oh, that is brutal. Oh. Finish strong here. And let's see what we got. All right, so we just finished Everest, AKA Cardiac Hill. There's no way in hell I'm climbing that thing up without an e-bike.
Yeah, it's earned that name well.
It absolutely has. Okay, so Bryce, and sorry for some of the noise, guys, but Bryce, tell us kind of what your key takeaways were as you rode all three bikes up.
So obviously the grade is really steep. It's a perfect trail to really test the motors. The Amflow, again, just felt the easiest and smoothest throughout. I think for me, it was the smoothest. It hit the 20-mile-per-hour limiter easier, but I could hold it at 20 easier as well. The other two did feel harder. This felt a little bit easier than the Trek, but I was gassed the whole way, so it's really hard to judge that after the fact.
Yeah, and Mike, your thoughts?
I mean, well, no shocker. The bike that's the lightest and has some of the highest ratings felt the easiest to get up the hill. I don't know if I topped out at 20 on that one or not, because I never felt it back off, but I definitely felt it on the Specialized a couple times back off. And I remember looking down because it messed up my cadence and seeing that I was bumping up at that 20-mile-an-hour mark. Either way, I probably felt the most challenging getting up the hill on the Trek, Specialized in second place, and then the Amflow was the smoothest and easiest to get up.
Yeah, mine was interesting because I did the Amflow last. And I was a little bit worried being out of shape, like this thing's gonna kill me, right? Because it's tiring. And so when I started, both of these bikes felt fantastic. Like I felt like I was just flying up that thing because I know how steep it is. I've tried to take other e-bikes up this, kind of rear hub motors, and we've tried to see if this can test. They cannot make it up. So that just is a statement of how good these motors are. I mean, just fantastic. But when I came down and then I went up on the Amflow, it was just another level for me. Like it really was.
It's a noticeable difference.
Yeah, and very similar to what you said, Bryce. Like I did hit 20, a little more on the S-Works than I did on the Trek here. This one I did hit 20, but you're right. Like I was able to keep pedaling and keep it there instead of feeling like it kind of cut out.
I didn't
and
feel
then
like I hit
had
a
to
wall
start
with
again.
that one. Yeah.
And so that helped. And then the last thing, at that very last steep section, on these bikes, I was kind of like 7 or 8 miles per hour. And on the Amflow, I was like 12 to 13. And so it really helped me out, especially being a little bit out of shape, just kind of just charge up that hill. But in general, I mean, they were all fantastic.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, guys, we are back in the office. We have took all the data from those rides out there and put it into some spreadsheets so we can look at it and visualize everything. Now we're gonna share that data with you guys. And just to recap, we had 3 riders on 3 hills, giving us a total of 27 different runs. So Justin, how does that data look?
Okay, so a lot of data here with 27 runs. So we'll kind of go over it in sections and then kind of give you some of the key takeaways there, because we really did want to be able to kind of pull out and try to differentiate a little bit between motor and overall bike, right? Like everybody always talks about how, you know, in all the other hill tests that I've watched, they always point out that it's just a hill test. It's not the whole thing. Most people ride uphill so they can go down, right? So we're trying to separate that out and add some data to quantify this. So it's not perfect. I mean, we only spent 2 days out there on the 3 bikes, but we did spend a decent amount of time and have some interesting stuff here. So first of all, just a general recap of the motors. The Amflow, which has 105 newton meters of torque, 1,000 watts of peak power. Again, we adjusted that from the default 750 watts that it comes with to that full 1,000 watts. The Specialized, the Levo, is 111 newton meters of torque and 720 watts. And the Trek Rail with the Bosch, the Bosch Performance CX motor has 100 newton meters of torque and 750 watts. So when you kind of put that in terms of percentage difference, on the wattage side of things, the Trek Rail is about 25% less powerful than the Amflow on the wattage. The Levo is 28% less powerful. On the torque side of things, Levo is a little bit more powerful, about 5% and change more powerful, whereas the Trek Rail is about 5% less powerful. So given those numbers, if you put everything into a vacuum, we kind of expect the results of a hill test to kind of mimic that, right? Taking the geo, taking away the kinematics, the suspension, the terrain, all that out of the question, that's kind of the baseline of what we would expect, okay? What we found was a little bit interesting. So we took all the climbs together, right? And we stacked all the Amflow climbs, all the Specialized climbs, all the Trek Rail climbs to get total climbing time for each bike for all 3 riders, right? What we found is the Amflow, the total time on all 3 hills was 9 minutes and 57 seconds of climbing. The Specialized was 11 minutes and 14 seconds of climbing, so about 13% slower than the Amflow. And the Trek Rail was a total of 11 minutes, 53 seconds of total climbing time, or 19.3% less power. So again, if you go back to our baseline of down 25%, down 28%, just again on the watts, I would say that the Specialized and the Trek performed a little better than we would have expected.
Especially when you go to like just looking at numbers.
Yeah. And so Amflow was obviously faster overall, but again, there's a little bit more to that. And we were able to kind of tease that out as we dove into the data for each individual hill segment. Yes. So give us an overview of the 3 different hills that we climbed.
Sure. So just to run through the hills and then a reminder of the rider recap. First hill is called Ass Kick Hill, 0.24 miles, 90 feet of elevation, and an average grade of 6.1%. Now I should probably clarify, these average grades are from Strava. Actually, all these numbers are from Strava. That's their segment distance, elevation, and grade. But it's an average grade, so some of these hills peaked at over 20%, so just keep that in mind as well. The second hill was the Slab at 0.17 that had 69 feet of elevation, and then that had a 7.5 average grade. Mount Everest, also affectionately called Cardiac Arrest Hill here in our town, distance was 0.38 miles, so almost a fourth of a mile, but they pack in 205 feet of elevation in that short distance, and that has an average grade of 10%, but that one peaked at like 22%. So very, very steep and very challenging no matter what power you had on the bike. Now for riders, Bryce is kind of our resident, I'd say, advanced MTB rider. That guy spends a lot of time on eMTBs, and he spends a lot of time riding, a lot of experience, a lot of good technical skills and fitness as well. So he's kind of really well-rounded at that advanced level. Justin he calls himself intermediate, but you are coming on the mend. You had a concussion, you've been off the bike quite a bit this year. So you consider yourself to be out of shape? Is that what you'd say? I don't want to say it. I'll let him say it.
I'm way out of shape. Well, I'll just be honest. That's fine. I'll own it.
All right, and then I am kind of the gravel guy here at work. So I spend a lot of my time on 700C wheels, drop bars, going for long distances. I don't do a ton of chunky technical mountain biking. I do help coach the kids' NICA team, but that's at a lower level where it's a lot of basics and fundamentals. So I don't consider myself intermediate or advanced in that MTB range. So we gave ourselves a pretty well-rounded entry, middle of the road, and advanced rider group, just so we could help further just kind of dial in these results and see and make sense of them.
And one other thing to point out is you haven't done a lot of riding, or if any riding, on electric mountain bikes.
I do it here at work, a little bit in my spare time, but traditionally I'm so focused on endurance rides and long distance 700C drop bars. That's where I spend my time.
Yeah, so as we look at this data, also just keep that in mind. That's similar to somebody transitioning into an eMTB space, right? Yeah. And so we have all that data. Looking at the hill segment, so as we break it apart, each hill, there were some really interesting things that we found. So on first, the ass kick hill, the times for the Amflow PL Carbon Pro. Bryce rode it in 59 seconds. That was a calm.
Somebody's mad.
The previous calm was 1:12 seconds. He blew that out of the water. I have been trying to beat that for years, just for the record. And I was a little pissed because my time was 1:11 seconds. So I was both really excited that I beat
Well, you technically did have the calm.
Except for no, because Bryce went first. I should have gone first, then I would have had the calm for a second.
But think about 6 seconds on just a quarter mile. That's a pretty massive difference.
And then Bryce even beating me by 12 seconds, right? So it's just fast. And then Mike got 1:37 seconds. On the Specialized Turbo Levo Gen 4 S-Works, Bryce was 1:05 seconds, so also would have beat the past calm. I was 1:18 seconds. Mike was 1:45 seconds. The Trek Rail Plus 8, Bryce was 1:12 seconds. I was 1:19 seconds, and Mike, you were 1:41 seconds. So if we take those times and we add them up together by bike, we see some interesting data. So the Amflow Carbon, if we add my time, your time, and Bryce's time, was a total of 3 minutes and 47 seconds up ass kick hill. The Turbo Levo was 4 minutes and 8 seconds, so just 9.25% slower than the Amflow, and the Trek Rail was pretty close behind at 4 minutes and 12 seconds and 11% less. So what that kind of tells me is that it is pretty clear that it's not just about the motor, right? Like we would have expected a 20-ish% difference in speed just based on specs alone, but really the Levo and the rail, they just felt very planted. That you do have slight difference in geometry, kinematics, suspension, all of that really did make those bikes feel really good going up, and they were able to kind of make up some of the time climbing up that hill because of that.
Absolutely, that did play a factor into it, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the Amflow still won, crazy fast, and it still felt really good, but all the bikes actually felt, Bryce would have set all the comms. They would have been all my PRs as well on those bikes, so fantastic bikes. The next segment is the slab, and times for that. So on the Amflow, Bryce was 34 seconds, I was 39 seconds, you were 46 seconds. On the Amflow. On the Turbo Levo, Bryce was 38 seconds, I was 44 seconds, and you were 50 seconds. And the Trek Rail, Bryce was 43 seconds, I was 46 seconds, and you were 54 seconds. So when we add all those up, the total time for the Amflow was 1:59 seconds. The Specialized Turbo Levo was 2 minutes and 12 seconds, so we're about 11% difference there. And the Trek Rail Plus 8 was 2 minutes and 23 seconds, or about 20% slower. So this is more in line of what we would kind of expect to see based off of the specs of wattage. And then the Specialized has more torque, which seems to be helping here as well. Yeah. But you're starting to see the difference widen between the Avinox motor and that Bosch and the Specialized Brose 3.1 motor, right? And then the next one, Mount Everest. This one is very interesting as well, because this is probably the one that isolates the motor the most, right? It's a paved trail. So there's
a city bike path.
Yeah, it's a city bike path. And so really it takes out a lot of the rider skill
Yes.
right? Makes it a little more even for you and me. And really just puts it on the motor, especially as you make that last turn and you're just going.
Where you're hitting 20 something.
That thing is really steep. Like you're pushing hard on any bike to get up there.
Yes.
And so it was very interesting. And the time kind of
tells
matches
the
up
story,
over-
yeah.
Exactly. So on the Amflow, Bryce was a minute 29. I was a minute 20. You were a minute 22. So we both kind of ended up beating Bryce on that one, right? The Specialized, the Levo, Bryce was a minute 33. I was a minute 45, and you were a minute 36. On the Trek, Bryce was a minute 51. I was a minute 48, and you were a minute 39.
Okay.
Right? When you add all those numbers together, the Amflow total time is 4 minutes 11 seconds. The Turbo Levo is 4 minutes 54 seconds, so that's 17% slower. And the Trek Rail was 5 minutes and 18 seconds, so 26.69% slower. So you really start to see that gap widen a little bit. And that's actually almost, like on the Trek, when we were expecting it 25% slower and it's 26% slower, like that matches up almost watt per watt. Yep. You also have some torque differences there. And that last segment, when you're in your lower gears, you definitely need the torque.
Yeah.
Which is where I think you get a bump of the Specialized over the Trek, right? Because it does have the higher torque, the 111 Newton meters of torque. And I could kind of feel that personally as I was kind of climbing up those last segments. You do have a little bit of a different discrepancy between my time on the Amflow and Bryce's time on the Specialized, right? But I kind of actually chalked, it's also important to remember, like, you kind of learn a bike and the cadence and where you need to be. Bryce has put 3,500 miles on that Levo.
Yeah,
I think he knows how to
Levo,
climb on that thing, right? And then out of all those three bikes, I've spent more time on the Amflow than the other two. And I think that kind of helped me there. But everything else actually lined up pretty darn well. And when you break it into riders now, this is also interesting. So, ass kick hill, Bryce's time on all three bikes was 3 minutes and 16 seconds. My time was 3 minutes 48 seconds, and your time was 5 minutes and 3 seconds. So
That's just for ass kick?
That's just ass kick hill. So I was 16% slower than Bryce. You were 54%. It's okay.
Good thing this doesn't go out.
I mean, he rides every day of the week, right? But it does, like, that kind of just shows, again, on the most technical side, the eMTB is not just going to be a magic wand, right? Like, there still is a lot of skill involved.
There's no replacement for spending time on your bike.
Yeah, it's just, and there's a huge gap there, right? As we get down to the slab, that gap starts to narrow. Bryce was a minute 55 seconds. I was 2 minutes and 9 seconds. You were 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? So I was 12% slower. You were 30% slower than Bryce. Again, it narrows. That was much less technical, but he was still able to be out of the saddle, cranking hard, absorbing those.
You still had some step ups. You still had some chunk, but it wasn't nearly as bad as ass kick. Yeah.
Correct. And then when we go to Mount Everest, cardiac arrest, this is where it kind of starts to even
That's
out.
where I actually felt like a peer. It's the only time.
Well, you were more than a peer on this one. So Bryce's time was 4 minutes 53 seconds. My time was also 4 minutes and 53 seconds. So we tied down to the second. And then yours was 4 minutes and 37 seconds. So you beat us by 5.46%, right? Yeah. You do a lot of zone 2 training, long distance,
hours,
gravel. So that kind of evened out the field, but also shows that you do pedal hard.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just, as we kind of look at all of that data, a couple of things that just really stand out is, again, I'll repeat it, it's not just the motor that matters, it is the whole bike in general, where you look at the Levo, you look at the Trek, like they really did feel planted, controllable. They were, I really actually like the mullet setup, the 29 by 27.5, which isn't, I mean, it's reflected somewhat in the first hill test, but not in the other two really at all. And so there is just a little bit more, but ultimately still, like, the Amflow is just a crazy good motor just in general.
And you couple that with the fact that this is their first release, like the Gen 2, I just think they kind of came out very strong with this bike. But it also shows you where you get some counterbalance with things like the Specialized Levo, the plantedness. I mean, think about who's going to go mountain biking. It's not everybody just climbing steep hills. You got downhill enduro guys who don't care about the climb, and everything is focused on the downhill. Well, that might be a situation where you want a more planted bike, you know? So it's not one size fits all, and it's not like, oh, well, one bike is lighter and technically faster. Depending on what you're doing with it could make or break your experience with that bike.
Yeah, and you know, there are some other kind of pros and cons that I would say aren't necessarily captured just in the speed data, right? And how fast you can climb the hill. For the, starting off with the Bosch motor, I think the biggest advantage there is, if you look at all the crazy good bikes that are being released this year, most of them are all, I mean, a lot of, if not most of them, are Bosch motors, right? Yeah. So Bosch is supplying, you know, Transition, Trek, or Bay, like it. You don't have to basically say, oh, I'm only going to go with the Specialized, or oh, I'm only going to go with an Amflow. You can pick whatever brand you want. I mean, these data, you know, the data, we've got a difference of like, you know, 9%, 20%, whatever. Translating that when you look at total times, and keep in mind also, we don't ride like this very often. No. Like you just don't. And if you're riding just more casually or even a little bit harder, that difference narrows. And that Bosch Performance CX motor is just a fantastic motor. Yeah. And the biggest advantage Bosch has is it's on the most amount of bikes. Like you really can pick the brand, the bike that you want, and there's a good chance that the Bosch motor, it's going to be the one on that, unless you're picking Specialized or anything.
Yeah, unless you go with those two companies.
The Specialized, it's just kind of classic Specialized. They've been one of the leaders in the e-bike space. They were like the first one to really dive headfirst and just say, hey, we're doing it. And they've kind of pushed the boundary a little bit more again with this new motor, where they upped the torque, 111 newton meters. You know, they only did 722 watts, but they also made it where you can go 28. So again, kind of pushing the boundaries here, right? And it's just kind of classic Specialized, where the geometry, the build is just fantastic.
They know what they're doing with that stuff.
They do, and on this bike, they just really beefed it up, where it really, you don't have to swap out anything. It's built, you know, it comes about 53 pound stock. Bryce knocked off a couple pounds with the tires, he's down to 51 pounds, and it just feels fantastic. It's, again, classic Specialized there. And, you know, both of those motors also, I have a feeling, have the ability to push the limits a little bit more if they want to. You know, they've obviously chosen to stay below the 750 watts. Now, can they go with an over-the-air update and push it farther?
Unlock it to 900 or 1,000 or whatever?
I would expect that they probably can, right? Just like Amflow did when they unlocked it to 1,000 watts.
Well, just look at the evolution of mid-drive motors for eMTB specifically in the last 2 to 3 years. I mean, we've gone from people thinking 60 was awesome to now being like, if it's not 100, I don't want it. You know, so it's interesting how the whole thing is coming to this very like punchy, and I don't know, it's just interesting to see where it's going to head.
And that's actually like a really good point, because that's where I started. I started out on the Orbea Rise, 60 newton meters of torque.
My Turbo Terra was like 40, and I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, and it was awesome for me, right? But now I want more than 100, and really that brings me to kind of the big advantage of the Amflow system, where yes, it's the fastest, it's also the lightest weight, but I also found it to be the most controlled and most precise. And so for me, I actually ride that in auto mode. They all have auto modes and are fantastic.
That's a lifesaver for me,
But
yeah.
I actually don't ride the Amflow in turbo very often, if at all.
When would you?
Like I don't know where the final say in wattage is gonna end up when the CPSC finally decides to get around and, you know, define that. But, you know, 1,000 might be too much. I mean, that was like screaming up that hill, you know, but it was also really fun. And I like how the fact that I can go in and tune that down. And I found myself, like if like my wife wants to ride, who does not ride very often, I would feel very comfortable putting her on the Amflow because of how smooth and precise it is. And I can just go in and tune it down.
That's a seriously strong point that bike has, is the pedal assistance. It's noticeably, I don't know, by lack of a better term, just very intuitive. It feels very natural, to where you don't feel like you're getting power added. You just feel like it's all just more efficient. Your leg strokes are more efficient. It just feels better, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, just really cool to see a company come in, brand new to the market, first motor, just knock it completely out of the park with that, right? And it's kind of, it feels at least like it's pushed the other brands to kind of up the power.
I think,
which I do think consumers want.
Yeah.
Like I know I did personally. I know Bryce did, and a lot of people I talked to did. It just makes it fun. And again, you can tune them down.
Right, you can always back it off if you don't want all that.
And so that's really pretty awesome. And I think ultimately where this kind of ends up at, yes, the Amflow was the fastest, but really, you know, for you, the viewer, you really don't need to pick your bike based on the motor. Like if you've always been a transition fan, you can go with the transition and get a motor that is, you know, if it's got any of these motors, it's going to be a really fun ride. And I just love that you can go across all the brands across that spectrum and just get something that is top notch that 3 years ago, I would have absolutely killed to have something like this.
Yeah. I think when I look back at this whole process and like what we took out of it, me being the very open-minded to each bike, because I had no preference. I didn't care what brand it was, what motor it was. I was just focused on making sure I didn't, you know, eat a rock going up each hill. So I was able to kind of come into this and just with a blank canvas and say, you know, how does it feel when it's all said and done? And after riding all 3 bikes on all 3 hills, it just feels like if you're out there shopping for an eMTB and you're worried like, well, that bike technically has 5 more Newton meters of torque, or that one has another 100 watts. I would, if any of these motors are present, I would not be caught up in those things. I'd look for the bike that fits me right, that feels the best, because these are like extreme torture test type testing environments. Your average everyday ride, it's gonna be way more about how much time you have in your saddle, your skill level, your fitness level, and how that bike feels with you. They're all 3 gonna perform awesome.
Yeah. So again, it's gonna depend on what you want. And so as far as all this data goes, we'll put it on the site. You know, we'll put it, obviously, it, you know, came up on the screen, but if you have any other questions, or if you feel like we were off somewhere, just put it down in the comments and we'll kind of keep this going. You know, again, we spent two full days with a lot of us out there testing this, but there might even be more testing that we do in the future.
Yeah, drop recommendations.
Yeah, and we'll keep it updated.
All right, guys, there you have it, our eMTB motor challenge. All sorts of hills, everything from some slab long climbs to super steep paved climbs and really chunky, more technical climbs. We got to see a little bit of everything with all 3 bikes. There really were no losers here. These were all really fantastic bikes. They just have slightly different personalities. Hopefully you guys took something away from this as well and learned something. If we didn't cover something that you did want to know, maybe we can figure out or get back to you, drop us a comment down below and we will personally get that back to you. Follow us on our socials and we'll see you guys in the next video.